Good morning, students. Welcome to Sai CA Coaching Center, and this is CA MS Swaminathan with you. Students, in furtherance to what we have learned till now, let us move on with the next part of the syllabus in today's session. Now, moving on from here, we move on to the next significant concept, which is now Six Sigma. Now, Six Sigma, here we will start seeing certain things like Six Sigma, process innovation, business process re-engineering. These are the next three concepts that we will have to look at in this chapter. Now, Six Sigma, BPR and process innovation. What are all these things about? Primarily, Six Sigma, process innovation and business process re-engineering are all talking about or dwelling only about process improvements essentially or process kind of innovations. A significantly different way of doing things. Now, coming to Six Sigma. Six Sigma, among the different methodologies available, is one well documented or officially documented procedure. Typically, Six Sigma, in my personal view, can be implemented only by those organizations where the volumes would tend to be significant. It might not be worthwhile for an organization which is small to try and implement this, though they can conceptually try to implement it because it requires huge volumes and also involves a huge cost. It concentrates essentially on reducing or virtually eliminating the defects in terms of products or processes which are existing in the organization so that high quality is delivered to the customer and their satisfaction is enhanced. They basically try to implement a zero defect policy. Now, the concept of Six Sigma is rather involves a lot of statistical tools as well. All that it fundamentally tries to say is there are different levels of Six Sigma, 1 Sigma, 2 Sigma, etc. But Six Sigma basically refers to a position where the percentage defective is brought down to virtually 0.0034%, which implies that you will see virtually a percentage yield of 99.99966. You can do your own calculations. If an organization were to process 1 million transactions, which means 10 lakh transactions, and the organization claims to be at Six Sigma level, then by processing 1 million transactions, which is 10 lakh transactions, the number of defects which should be possible out of those 10 lakh must not exceed 3.4, which means virtually the defects are being brought down to zero level, virtually. So theoretically it will not be at zero. So the maximum number of defects would be 3.4 out of 10 lakhs, is as good as saying non-existent. That's the kind of quality it reaches, in other words, near perfection stage. So there are several control mechanisms as well installed, available to check whether we are progressing along the right path. Now, under Six Sigma, we have to understand that it's a very formalized approach, unlike the other approaches, as it is officially documented well, the strategy. Also, well-trained in-house personnel are available to implement Six Sigma. Typically, in a Six Sigma organization, employees would be trained and certified as green belt, black belt, etc. Something similar to your karate. And the black belt certified employees would be the ones who are rated to be experts and therefore will be tasked with the responsibility of implementing Six Sigma across the length and breadth of the organization. So they will have support available from various team members in the organization at different levels and would go ahead with the implementation of Six Sigma. Now, with regard to Six Sigma, broadly there are two different methodologies available within Six Sigma. It's a very simple concept. One is for an existing organization, the existing processes will have to be improved upon to remove the existing or eliminate the existing defects and improve the customer satisfaction level by enhancing the quality. This is addressed through an approach by name. The short form is DMAIC. which is something like design the process, the improved process that you want, measure the process that you want effectively. So first you try to define an existing problem which you want to rectify. Then you will have to measure the current levels to know what exactly is the current performance levels. And then one will have to find out what causes these problems, which is what is the third stage, the analyze stage, the DMA, and then the I again, which is the improvement stage. After having identified the root causes of the problem, one will have to sit and figure out what are all those improvements that I need to make to the current process. I'm not completely revamping the process. I'm trying to improve upon the process. Could be small, could be a little big as well. Those improvements, when they are actually implemented, the benefits would be seen. So I will have to have some control mechanisms to monitor whether the end result is being perceived or not, is being realized or not, which is the last stage, which is control. So DMAIC basically is one methodology that is used to improve upon existing processes and not to basically introduce new processes. So there are some given set of circumstances or prerequisites that must prevail for DMAIC approach to be used, which in short, I would like to say the environment must be fairly stable, okay, and not very dynamic. That's when we try to implement improvements to the current processes. And the next one refers basically to your DMAIDV, which is basically something to do with DMADV, which is basically to do with introducing new processes and not just introducing small refinements to the earlier processes. This is something like you will discard the earlier process and introduce it with something which is better. Okay. Hence, DMA-DV approach is used in a situation where there is a lot of dynamism. Things are changing probably frequently, unlike the earlier case which we saw with DMA-IC, where the environment, internal, external, was considered to be more stable. There are some differences given between the DMA-IC and DMA-DV, which you can read, self-explanatory. So I repeat, DMA-DV is used to introduce new process. The first three steps would be the same as in the earlier approach: the define, the measure, and the analyze. The fourth stage earlier, we try to improve upon an existing process. Here, we would like to discard the earlier process and define the new process to be installed. And then we will have to basically verify whether the new process will function appropriately to yield the appropriate result to us. Now, there are some tools available in Six Sigma, quality management tools. I guess that's also fairly self-explanatory. If you read it, you'll be able to understand. If you have any doubts, please reach me. One point that I would like to highlight with regard to the quality management tools on page 35 will be Pareto diagram, wherein it uses the concept of 80%, 20% apportionment. That is, 80% of the defects of a process will emerge out of 20% of the causes. This is something similar to ABC analysis. You are able to identify the main causes of a majority of the problem and basically hammer it out. That's all that is involved in Pareto. The other ones are fairly self-explanatory. Now, after the Six Sigma, we move on to the process innovation and the business process re-engineering, the twin concepts. Now, process innovation, the term itself is very clear. Innovation meaning you're trying to invent and improve upon, in the sense, it's not that the earlier process is retained with some slight improvements. It's a big time change in the process. Virtually something like a new process replaces the earlier process. That's what happens in process innovation, which could be used in different facets of the organization, either relating to production, or it could also be with regard to delivering the output to the customer in terms of logistics management, supply chain management, okay, and something relating to support services as well in terms of inventory holding, probably the angle of purchasing or maintenance of the factory, the accounting aspect, etc. So process innovation would be something where we are not looking at minor gains in terms of small changes. It's not that the existing process is being retained with some slight improvements. It's a mega change, and a new process replaces the earlier one. Now, finally, we move on to business process re-engineering. This concept basically, when we look at the terminology, business process it deals with processes, not essentially a direct analysis about the output, but about the inputs in terms of processes. And we know that a process is made up of multiple steps or tasks. So each process will be broken up into multiple tasks to be able to identify any root cause problems to resolve them. Something similar to the ABC analysis in terms of identifying the basic cost drivers. Now, the reason we try to concentrate on processes is in business process re-engineering, all that we are interested in is trying to identify or hold a person responsible for a particular process. Now, sales, for example, can be analyzed as if a sales has to be made. Well, first the order has to be procured from the customer. It has to be checked the inventory whether the stock is available. If yes, inventory people will supply it. If not available, then the inventory will contact the the purchase department to purchase the item. The item will be purchased and then supplied to the production department. The production department would basically manufacture and then the supply can be made to the customer. Different departments are involved. So a single sale transaction goes through different departments actually, though we might term it just as a sale. In process related re-engineering, what we try to identify is, though a particular activity has to go through several different departments, the flow must be seamless, means uninterrupted. It must be very smooth. The interconnectivity between the inventory, the production, the purchase, and the marketing or the sales department must be seamless, and also so that there are no interruptions. And there must be one person who can be held accountable for that process to be functioning in a seamless manner. Instead of making a customer run from pillar to post, you have one person who can take charge, responsibility for the process to function normally. This is the primary concept behind business process re-engineering, wherein there is a fundamental rethinking involved and a radical redesign, as given in your material, of business processes. So it involves a fundamental rethinking. How can a particular existing process be bettered is what we try to think. And can I do any big time changes to the existing process? Please bear in mind this is re-engineering, not engineering, meaning you are not introducing new processes. The existing process is being improvised in a big way. What for? To achieve dramatic improvements where in critical contemporary measures of performance, such as my cost should reduce, my quality should improve, my service standards must improve, and the speed at which I deliver must also be higher. These are the essential components of business process re-engineering, and they represent the 4 significant components of business process re-engineering. Now, moving on from there, there are some principles of BPR. Now, for successful implementation of BPR, a chart is given on page 39. I guess quite self-explanatory, but then we will, there are some explanations given as well about those points in the subsequent pages, though we will touch probably each of them as much as possible just to understand it a little better. Now, organizing, the first one is organizing around outcomes, not tasks. As I said to you, you're not concerned with the task. You're concerned what is the outcome of the particular process, and therefore organize the work around the outcome, not a particular task. Now, the second one basically, in fact, to look at it this way, from an organize around outcomes and not tasks. If you want to have some item to be consumed, you're trying to make some item. All that it tries to say is organizing around outcomes and not tasks. There might be multiple activities to be done to cook, but then the end output is your, for example, gulab jamun, or maybe you say samosa. Organizing around the quality at the output level is one thing which you see. Well, relating to a process, okay? Don't forget that it relates to a process. Second one, have those who need the results of a process perform the process. Now, I might not be wanting to give you an exact example, but I will try to give an example to which you may hopefully be able to relate to. I repeat, have those who need the results of a process perform the process. Well, this is something like saying, instead of actually going and demanding the gulab jamun to be made by your mother, if you want the result, you want the benefit of eating the gulab jamun, you might as well perform the process. So have those who need the results of a process perform the process, because you would be the person who is most interested in that activity and hence will ensure top quality for it, which you can't expect from others, saving a few, as we know in real life. The third one, integrate the processing of information into the work process that produces the information. Take, for example, a catering establishment. In a particular marriage hall, if the activity of catering is being conducted, there we all know that 10 different types of activities will be happening. Each one will be given a particular job to do. Now, if someone, for example, is in charge of making, let us say, onion chutney, and the onions will not be arriving on time, that information must be relayed directly to the person who is in charge of that particular activity to speed up the process of corrective action that can be taken. It should not be that this particular information is relayed to someone else who is not concerned with the onion chutney preparation, and that person in turn communicates to the person who is in charge of this activity. All that happens is this can cause a delay in relaying information, probably even a communication gap or a miscommunication could occur. So as much as possible, try to integrate the processing of information into the work process that produces the information. The next one is treat geographically dispersed resources as though they were centralized. For example, if you have an establishment with branches in 4 different states or 4 different districts, now we all know, after having read the basics of economics, there is this concept of economies of scale. Now, the greater and greater the volume of purchase that you make from your supplier, the higher and higher will be the quantitative discounts you can enjoy. Now, when you have your branches in 4 different districts of a state, and suppose they are decentralized, and suppose each of the branch in a district can make its own local purchases. Fundamentally, at the outset, a prima facie, we are able to understand one thing, that the quantitative discount that we might be enjoying from one supplier to supply to us the requirements to meet the production quantity levels of all the 4 branches will be much higher than what will be provided by 4 different suppliers, because 4 different suppliers will definitely tell us we are supplying only lesser quantity to you, and therefore a lower discount only will be given to you. Now here what happens is, instead of actually sourcing through 4 different suppliers, we can still try to source through one supplier, though we are decentralized, but then have an agreement with the supplier that though the branch will actually get connected to a central database and log their request for supply, you will supply it to the branch over there, whatever cost we will pay for it. Of course, a cost benefit analysis will have to be borne in mind. So treat geographically dispersed resources as though they were centralized. Line parallel activities instead of integrating their results. Now we have to pay a little attention to this point. Take, for example, a scenario wherein 2 of us have to reach location A, and the purpose being we need to collect a parcel at location A to be delivered to us by 2 other people who will be coming to location A at 10 o'clock. Now we have to reach location A from the northern direction, and the other 2 will have to reach it from the southern direction. Okay. After having collected the parcel at location A, we need to deliver it to another person in location B. Now, we would have started from our place to reach location A at rather by 10 o'clock, so that we are there in time to receive the parcel. Now, once we reach the location, can we call the person who is supposed to come to deliver to us and tell, we have arrived, can you now start? No. I think both of us will be traveling in parallel to reach the location simultaneously so that we receive the parcel and deliver it to location B. Now, these are called as parallel activities. Now, when we two are departing from the northern direction and the other two are departing from the southern direction, if there is going to be an accident in between of some vehicle or a road blockade on account of which we are likely to reach late, all that this requires is there must be an integrated flow of information quickly from the person who is in that affected zone to the other person who is coming, so that the other person can plan for some other activity and execute it accordingly, and then come at the appropriate time to your location A and collect the parcel rather than come and waste the time. This is what we try to indicate by saying line parallel activities instead of integrating the results. And if you read through, you find if parallel activities have been created, use communications network, shared databases, and teleconferencing to coordinate the activities that must eventually come together. I hope this point is clear to you. And then we move on to put the decision point where the work is performed and build controls into the process. Now, when you finished 10th standard and you wanted to take science or commerce, and probably you took commerce, in today's scenario, unlike what used to happen 3 decades ago, probably, and 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, parents used to basically tell the child, you have to do this, and the children used to do that. Majority of the cases. In today's world, very few parents are basically into that activity. They tell the child, well, you need to decide what you want to do. Why? Put the decision point where the work is performed. It is you who want to do CA, so you better decide what you want to do. Do you want to do CA? Yes, I am willing to pay the fees. If the parent were to compel the child to undertake any course like chartered accountancy, for example, and the child later comes back and tells, I did the course just for the heck of it, I have not been able to clear, don't worry, it's all because I was never interested in the course. The parent feels miserable. So what are they trying to do? They are not trying to wriggle out of that situation. They are not trying to shirk the responsibility. All they're trying to do is empower the child to decide. You decide what's important for you, what is it that you want to do. You have every right to take the decision, move on, so that you stand committed to what you have decided. Put the decision point where the work is performed. And of course, when you go and tell the parent that I want to do CA, the parent tells, very good, you have analyzed, I'll pay the fees, but ensure one thing, you pass in the very first attempt. And the parent probably just keeps watching whether you are studying on the whole or not. They don't dig deep into it. They're happy so long as you are studying and you are busy in your own activity. Then capture information once and at the source. We must be very clear with this point. One must certainly avoid in any system the activity of collecting information from different sources and inputting it into different sources. This can cause serious anomalies in the system. You must have one validating system which will capture comprehensive information just at one place, which is the source, and that must in turn feed all other dependent systems in your establishment. Otherwise, there can be huge reconciliation related issues. Therefore, this principle is inbuilt. Capture information once and at the source. Of course, if you capture it incorrectly, there's going to be a devastating effect. Okay, and if you don't capture it at the source, then also you will have huge negative effect or an adverse effect. So you could use telecommunications, you could use EDI, electronic data interchange, etc., for the purposes of ensuring this is done promptly. Value chain analysis developed by Porter can also be used in business process re-engineering, etc., to help us identify the value-adding steps, the non-value-adding steps, and do the needful. With that, I guess the third chapter comes to a closure. Best of luck and do well. Finish all the exercises and illustrations and case studies. Bye.